The outer rim of the galaxy was a place of silence, where even light seemed reluctant to travel. Distant stars flickered weakly, as though time itself had forgotten them. In that endless quiet, a forgotten outpost drifted on the edge of collapse. Its metallic hull bore the scars of centuries, dense fractures and entire sections left open to the void where air had long since escaped. What had once been a proud construction of an ancient race now resembled a carcass suspended in the dark, waiting for the universe to decide whether it deserved memory or oblivion. For ages, the Kurani outpost had survived only in fragments of legend. Old maps marked it as abandoned. Traders spoke of it in hushed tones, and warlords never wasted resources chasing after what they assumed was dust. But humanity had come differently. Curious, stubborn, unwilling to accept the silence of the past, the Resolute Dawn, a human exploration. The vessel slid into orbit around the fractured station. Its sleek surface reflected the faint glow of the nearby dwarf star, its hull unmarred by the years. Engines hummed softly, as though eager for the challenge, and the crew inside braced themselves. The Kurani were supposed to be extinct. Entire archives agreed on this point. If the sensors were correct, if the faint signals coming from within this ruined structure were true, then history itself had lied. Captain Sarah Vane stood at the front of the bridge, her gaze locked on the cracked silhouette of the station. Her expression was composed, but inside her chest beat a rhythm of disbelief and anticipation. She had studied the Kurani in her academy years, an ancient people, architects of technologies that even now baffled scientists. According to every text, they had vanished 3 centuries earlier, consumed by wars no one fully understood. And yet, here was a heartbeat from the void. "Confirm again," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. The sensor officer adjusted. Controls, his eyes scanning lines of data. "Life signs are faint, Captain, but they're there, not one, not two, dozens." Deep inside the core levels of the outpost, murmurs passed across the bridge. A myth had suddenly become real. The Kurani were alive. Sarah inhaled slowly, steadying herself. The weight of responsibility pressed against her shoulders. Humanity had grown in influence, yes, but they were still young compared to the vast civilizations of the stars. Finding. Survivors of a people once feared and revered would change everything, not just for humans, but for the entire galactic order. "Prepare a landing team," she ordered. "Medical, engineering, and security. We go in cautious but ready. If the Kurani have survived this long, they deserve to see the light again." The crew dispersed into motion, discipline overtaking awe. As shuttles descended toward the fractured structure, the sight grew sharper. Entire wings of the station were collapsed inward, twisted as though crushed by invisible fists. Dark fractures ran across its hull like veins, glowing faintly from exposed reactors, barely clinging to functionality. There was no beauty left in the architecture, only a stubborn refusal to collapse. Inside corridors gaped open into the void. But in the heart of the structure, shielded beneath layers of crumbling alloy, life clung desperately to existence. The first human boots touched the Kurani floors with a metallic echo. Suits sealed tight, visors glowing. They pressed through the darkness, guided by scanners and faint flickering lights. Air was thin and sour, recycled through failing systems. The silence was profound, broken only by the crackle of comms and the steady rhythm of boots against ancient steel. "Readings confirm it," the medic said softly, scanning deeper levels. "They're alive, barely, but alive." The squad pushed forward, descending through stairwells half-collapsed and corridors cluttered with debris. Then, finally, they saw them huddled in a chamber lit by failing lamps were the Kurani. Their bodies were gaunt, their eyes hollow but still alight with something defiant. Their skin, once said to shimmer with vitality, now bore the pale shade of long suffering. Yet in their presence was a gravity that no decay could erase. These were not merely survivors. They were remnants of a legacy. One Kurani elder lifted his gaze as the humans entered. His voice was faint, rasping through a throat long unused to strength. "You came. After all this time." Sarah stepped forward, lowering her visor so that he might see her face clearly. "We're here now," she said softly. and we're not leaving you behind." The chamber filled with a silence that was not emptiness, but weight. The Qurani watched these strange newcomers, uncertain yet desperate for what they offered. Trust was not given easily. It had cost them dearly in the past. But they had no strength left for doubt. Medical kits opened, and soft beams of human technology began scanning fragile bodies. Water was distributed, oxygen replenished, and energy. Packs lit the chamber brighter than it had been in centuries. Slowly, the Qurani stirred, strength seeping back like sunlight through cracks in stone. But with life returned came memories, bitter, sharp, and unhealed. One younger Qurani, his frame trembling, yet his eyes fierce, spoke through a translator. "You should not have come. If they learn we live, they will come again. They will finish what they started." Sarah met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "Let them come. Humanity stands with you now. We don't abandon those who endure." The words seemed impossible to the Qurani, yet something in them sparked. A reminder that loyalty, though rare, was not extinct. As the humans worked, the outpost itself groaned under their weight, as though reminded of its own fragility. Entire beams shuddered, and dust fell from ceilings. Engineers rushed to stabilize failing supports, their tools igniting sparks against metal older than their own civilizations. One human leaned close to Sarah, whispering urgently, "Captain, the station won't hold long. If we don't move them, soon it's all going to come down." Sarah glanced at the Qurani, these broken figures who had refused death for centuries. To abandon them now would be an act of cruelty beyond measure. She straightened, her voice firm. "Then we move fast. Get them ready for evacuation, all of them." The Qurani elder's eyes widened. "All," he whispered. Even now others would only take the strong, the useful. Sarah's voice was iron. "We don't choose who deserves to live. Everyone comes. That's our way." The Qurani exchanged glances, their disbelief slowly softening into something else. Something like fragile trust. Shuttles began ferrying survivors to the waiting Resolute Dawn. Each trip carried with it not just lives, but history itself. With every Qurani lifted into human arms, the galaxy's understanding of itself shifted. Myths had turned to reality. Extinction had given way to survival. Yet Sarah knew the cost. Their arrival would not go unnoticed. If humanity had found the Qurani, so could others. And not all would come with mercy. Still, as the last shuttle departed and the broken station groaned in its final breaths, Sarah stood at the viewport, watching stars wheel slowly against the void. Her heart was heavy, but it was also steady. The Qurani were alive. And with them, a new chapter of history had begun. The Resolute Dawn cut across the black expanse of space like a blade, its engines leaving faint trails of blue ion light that vanished swiftly into the infinite. Within its armored hull, silence pressed against the crew. The ship no longer carried only explorers, it carried survivors of a species thought extinct. Every corridor echoed with footsteps and murmurs, the once ordered routine of humans now intertwined with the cautious presence of the Qurani. The rescued survivors had been placed in the medical wing, where sterile lights contrasted against the ragged appearance of their gaunt forms. Monitors hummed with rhythmic beeps, registering weak pulses slowly growing stronger. Human medics moved carefully, administering fluids, stabilizers, and nourishment packs. Every action was watched by Qurani eyes, suspicious yet quietly grateful. They had not felt the touch of mercy in centuries. Captain Sarah Vane stood at the observation deck overlooking the medbay. Her reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass, calm, resolved, but edged with the weight of the unknown. She had saved them, yes, but what came next? The galaxy was not a place of forgiveness. Old rivalries were not forgotten. If the Qurani lived, then those who had driven them to ruin would not rest. Behind her, footsteps approached. Commander Elias. Trent, her second-in-command, carried a datapad tucked under his arm. His voice was low, carrying the tone of a man who knew the weight of news before it was spoken. "Long-range sensors picked up transmissions, Captain," he said. "Encrypted, faint, but heading outward from this sector. Someone knows we were." "There?" Sarah turned slowly, her gaze sharpening. How long before they reach the core systems? Hours, maybe a day, Elias replied grimly. If it's the Dominion, they'll move fast. They'll want to erase the Kurani before the word spreads. Sarah exhaled, the breath heavy. The Dominion, humanity's rival in almost every corridor of power. Ruthless, cold, efficient. For centuries, they had acted as the shadow hand across the galaxy, ensuring no ancient rival civilization could rise again. To them, the Kurani were not survivors. They were unfinished business. Her eyes drifted, back to the Kurani lying in recovery, fragile, broken, yet undeniably alive. We can't turn back, she said quietly. If the Dominion comes, we meet them. Humanity didn't come this far to play executioner for someone else's fear. Elias frowned. That's a war you're talking about, Sarah. We're not ready for that scale, her jaw tightened. Neither were the Kurani. Look what happened to them. The words hung between them, sharp as steel. Deep within the medical wing, a murmur spread among the Kurani. Some were regaining strength, their voices low but filled with urgency. The elder who had first spoken to Sarah now sat upright, supported by human medics. His once dim eyes burned with a faint echo of the power that had defined his people. Through a translator device, he addressed Sarah when she entered. His voice was cracked but steady. You don't understand the storm you've walked into. Our survival is not just a wound to the past, it is a threat to the present. The ones who destroyed us, they are not gone, they are waiting. Sarah met his gaze firmly. Then let them wait, because you're not alone anymore. The elder's expression faltered, something almost like disbelief softening the lines of his worn face. For centuries, the Kurani had lived in silence, convinced the galaxy had no place left for them. And now, humans, young, reckless, and unafraid, spoke words no one else had dared. In the mess hall, whispers spread among the key. Human crew. Soldiers leaned over trays, engineers murmured in corners, and medics shared cautious thoughts. Some were proud. They had saved lives, restored a people long forgotten. Others were fearful. What if sheltering the Kurani brought destruction on their own families? What if the Dominion came? A young soldier slammed his fist lightly on the table, frustration in his voice. We're not ready for this. We signed up to explore, not to drag ghosts back from the grave. Across from him, a medic glared. Ghosts? Those ghosts are people. Would you rather have left them to die in that tomb? The soldier's expression faltered, shame creeping in, but fear still lingered in his eyes. Commander Elias, passing through the hall, heard every word. He knew morale was fragile. Humanity had stepped into history without realizing how sharp its edges could be. As hours turned to days, the Kurani grew stronger. Their bodies responded quickly to treatment, but it was their minds that bore the heaviest scars. Night after night, some woke screaming in a tongue ancient yet filled with terror. Memories of firestorms, of entire cities collapsing, of ships falling from the skies. Humanity offered comfort, but they could not erase what centuries had carved. One younger Kurani, Kael, became a voice among the survivors. His spirit burned hotter than the others, his mistrust of humans clear, yet his eyes betrayed a hunger for something more. He would watch the human crew intently, as though weighing whether their words of loyalty were truth or merely another mask of betrayal. Sarah sought him out one evening, finding him alone in a quiet chamber. The stars glowed faintly through a small viewport, casting long shadows. You don't trust us, she said plainly. Kyle's gaze flicked to her, sharp as a blade. Trust is a luxury, one we buried long ago. Sarah stepped closer, her voice calm. And yet you're alive because of us? Whatever enemies you had, they weren't the ones who came back for you. We did. His jaw tightened, but silence was his only answer. Yet in that silence, something cracked, an acknowledgement he could not voice. Then the alarms sounded. The resolute dawn shuddered as proximity sensors blared across the bridge. Officers scrambled to stations, voices sharp with urgency. A red glow bathed the control panels, warning of what approached. Elias's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple signatures inbound, fast, not Dominion warships, scouts. They've tracked us. Sarah's eyes hardened. Battle stations, Keep the Kurani secured. The ship shifted, engines roaring as defensive shields powered up. Outside, the void lit with streaks of approaching ships, sleek, angular, marked with the crimson insignia of the Dominion. Scouts, yes, but armed and ruthless. They hailed no warnings. Their weapons lit the dark dot. The first salvo struck the Resolute Dawn's shields, sending a tremor through the hull. Sparks showered across consoles, and officers shouted damage reports. The battle had begun. Sarah's voice rang clear, steady against the storm. Return fire, show them humanity doesn't run. Cannons thundered from the Resolute Dawn, beams of light carving through the void. One Dominion scout burst into flames, scattering debris into the endless dark, but the others pressed on, relentless. In the medbay, the Kurani felt the ship shudder and groan. Panic rippled through them, their memories of past wars rising like ghosts. Kale gripped the railing, his voice bitter. This is what I warned you, wherever we go, death follows. But one human medic turned to him, fierce despite fear. Then let death follow. We'll fight it every time. That's the difference. The battle raged. Hull plating screamed under impacts, and corridors trembled as power conduits flared. Yet the Resolute Dawn endured. Humanity had not come to vanish quietly into the dark. On the bridge, Sarah's hands moved swiftly over controls. Her voice carried calm authority, guiding her crew through fire and chaos. Bit by bit, the Dominion scouts faltered. One was crippled, another forced into retreat, but the cost was heavy. Shields burned low, engines strained, and casualties reported from across the ship. Finally, as silence fell once more over the void, the Dominion ships were gone. For now, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. She turned to Elias, her voice grim. They know the Kurani live. The galaxy will not stay silent. Elias nodded, the weight of truth pressing down on them both. Then we prepare for all of it. Sarah looked once more toward the medbay, where the Kurani huddled in uneasy silence. She had promised they would not be abandoned. Now, that promise meant war. And she would keep it. The silence after battle was heavier than the clash itself. The Resolute Dawn drifted through space like a wounded predator, alive yet scarred. Fires hissed in half-sealed compartments, and engineers scrambled to keep the life support stable. Across the ship, medics tended to both human and Kurani alike, blood mixing, sweat dripping, voices carrying the same urgency regardless of race. In the command deck, the red lights dimmed, returning to the softer glow of standard illumination. Captain Sarah Vane stood tall, though exhaustion clawed at her shoulders. The Dominion had retreated, but the message was clear. This was no isolated encounter. The galaxy now knew the truth. Kurani blood flowed again, and humanity had chosen to protect it. Commander Elias approached her, datapad in hand. His face carried fresh lines of weariness, but his voice held steady. Damage reports are coming in. We've lost 3 decks to fire, but containment is holding. Casualties, 12 confirmed, 26 injured. Engines are running at 50%. Sarah's eyes darkened. Each life lost was a weight she carried, but there was no time for grief. And the Kurani? They're shaken, but alive, Elias said. Some even helped during the fire suppression. Not much, but enough to... Totis? Sarah raised an eyebrow. They chose to act? Elias nodded, surprising considering their mistrust. But maybe survival leaves no room for hesitation. Her gaze turned distant, fixed on the endless black beyond the viewport. Or maybe they're remembering what it means to fight. In the medbay, Kale paced restlessly. His frame, though gaunt, carried a restless energy, like a flame refusing to die. Other Kurani watched him, uncertain but drawn to his defiance. He spoke in their native tongue, harsh and sharp, yet his words carried a thread of something dangerous. Hope. They bleed for us, Kyle muttered. Humans, strangers. They fight battles that should have ended long before their time. Do you not see? The galaxy believed us gone, yet here we are, alive, witnessed. The elder, frail yet wise, responded softly, Hope is not a weapon, it is a weight. Do not mistake their mercy for destiny. but Kale's eyes burned. Mercy is never free. If they stand with us, they stand against the Dominion. And if humanity is willing to carry that burden, then perhaps the galaxy will learn what we once were. The Kurani around him murmured. Fear still bound them, but in Kale's voice lay the echo of something they had buried for centuries: defiance. Meanwhile, word of the encounter spread beyond the ship. Encrypted channels whispered of the Resolute Dawn's defiance of Kurani. Survivors walking among humans once more. In the shadowed halls of the Dominion, leaders convened, their voices cold and deliberate. They cannot be allowed to return, one figure declared, his eyes gleaming with fanatic purpose. The Kurani were purged for a reason. Their power was unchecked. Their empire stretched too far, too fast. If they rise again, everything we built shatters. Another, calmer but no less ruthless, replied, "It is not the Kurani who concern me. It is humanity. They move like children playing with fire, yet they do not burn. They adapt. They resist. Now they defy." The chamber fell silent. Every mind there understood what it meant. Humanity had crossed a line. No longer explorers, no longer harmless upstarts. By choosing to shelter the Kurani, they had declared themselves players in a war older than their species' memory. Dot and the Dominion never forgave Dot aboard the Resolute Dawn. Days bled into tense preparation. Engineers rebuilt shields with what little spare components remained. Soldiers drilled in corridors, their movements sharp, precise, masking the unease simmering beneath. Humanity had always been quick learners, but the threat now looming was beyond anything training could prepare them for. Sarah gathered her officers in the strategy chamber, a holographic map of surrounding sectors flickering before them. Red markers pulsed, Dominion patrol routes, intercepted transmissions, possible ambush points. The galaxy was tightening its net. "We can't outrun them forever," Elias said, his tone heavy. "Every jump we make, they'll follow. Sooner or later, we'll be cornered." Sarah's gaze swept across the officers. "Then we don't run. We find allies. Somewhere in this galaxy, there are those who remember the Kurani differently, not as tyrants, but as balance. If we stand alone, we fall. If we stand united, we may survive." One officer frowned. "Captain, with respect, who would dare defy the Dominion openly? They rule half the galaxy in fear. Even whispers of resistance vanish before they take form." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we give them more than whispers." Her words hung in the chamber like steel, sharp enough to cut doubt. Kale overheard fragments of this discussion later, carried through the ship by murmurs of crew. For the first time, a flicker of admiration touched his features. Humans did not simply survive, they challenged. They dared to stand against storms others bowed to. Yet, deep within him, mistrust lingered. He remembered the fall of the Kurani, alliances shattered, promises broken, betrayals disguised as mercy. Could humans be different? Or was history preparing to repeat itself with a crueler hand? Still, when Sarah passed him in the corridor, he paused. Their eyes met, a silent clash of wills. "You risk everything for us," he said quietly. Almost unwillingly, Sarah studied him. "We risk everything because that's what survival demands. Yours, ours, it makes no difference. The galaxy doesn't hand out second chances. Sometimes you have to take them." For the first time, Kale's lips curved into something not quite a smile, but close enough. The fragile bond between humans and Kurani grew in small, uneven steps. Shared meals in the mess hall, quiet conversations between medics and survivors, moments where laughter slipped past scars. Yet just as often, fear reared its head. Some humans avoided the Kurani, their whispers sharp. "They'll bring doom upon us. History will repeat." And some Kurani, scarred by centuries of exile, recoiled from human kindness, convinced it was another mask of betrayal. But despite the cracks, something undeniable began to form. Connection. A thread, fragile as glass, yet stronger than silence. The storm broke when the Dominion returned. This time not scouts, warships. The Resolute Dawn's sensors screamed warnings as massive signatures emerged from hyperspace. The void lit with shadows of titanic vessels, each bristling with weapons. Their hulls etched with crimson insignia. Elias's voice was sharp with urgency. "Captain, 5 war cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts. They've come for blood." The bridge fell silent, the weight of those words pressing down like gravity itself. Sarah's face hardened, resolve burning in her eyes. "Signal the crew. This is no longer a skirmish. This is survival." Alarms blared across the ship. Soldiers rushed to stations, engineers secured power lines, medics prepared triage bays. The Qurani, though unarmed, gathered together, their eyes wide with terror and something else, recognition. This was the scale of destruction they remembered. Kyle stepped forward, defiance crackling in his voice. "Do not fight for us alone. Let us stand with you. We may be broken, but we are not helpless." Sarah turned to him, her voice sharp. "You're not soldiers anymore, you're survivors." His gaze blazed. "Then let survivors teach death how to fear." The bridge trembled as the Dominion ships advanced. Weapons primed. The Resolute Dawn stood small against the giants, a single spark against an ocean of fire. Yet within its hull, hearts burned fierce. Humanity had chosen its path. The Qurani had chosen to rise once more. The void held its breath. And the war truly began. The Dominion's fleet loomed like a wall of darkness, blotting out starlight. Their dreadnoughts were not just ships, they were declarations of supremacy, forged from centuries of conquest. Against them, the Resolute Dawn looked fragile, a lone ember defying an endless storm. On the bridge, silence was broken only by the hum of failing shields. Captain Sarah Vane stood at the center, her voice steady despite the shadow of annihilation. "Status report." "Shields at 60%, Elias answered. "Weapons primed, but against that fleet," he trailed off. Everyone knew the truth. This was not a battle they could win. It was a stand. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we make it one the galaxy remembers." The Dominion's voice boomed across open comms, dripping with contempt. "Humans, you shelter what is forbidden. Surrender the Qurani and we may grant you mercy. Resist and your world will burn." Kyle stood near the edge of the bridge, his posture rigid. He listened, and for the first time in generations, his people's name was spoken not as a whisper of extinction, but as a threat once more. He stepped forward, defiance shaping every word. "We will not kneel, not again, not ever." Sarah didn't silence him. Instead, she turned to the comms officer. "Transmit this response." She faced the void, her voice carrying steel. "Humanity does not trade lives for survival. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." The channel cut. The war began. The first volley struck like thunder. The Resolute Dawn shook violently, alarms wailing as shields flared under the onslaught. Metal groaned, sparks rained across consoles, but the crew held their ground. "Return fire," Elias barked. Turrets roared, lances of plasma streaking into the dark. Against the Dominion's war cruisers, their firepower was a spark against mountains, but it was a spark that refused to die. In the lower decks, Qurani survivors took action. Though unarmed, they carried supplies, sealed breaches, aided medics. Fear warred with instinct, but Kale's voice rang through them like fire in the veins. "Fight with your hands if you must, but fight. Every breath we draw is defiance." The Dominion pressed harder. Another barrage tore through Deck 5, venting compartments into space. Dozens perished instantly, yet still the Resolute Dawn fought. The crew moved with precision born of desperation, every life sacrificed buying another second of resistance. Sarah's voice carried over the chaos. "Target their engines, cripple one, and we create an opening." The gunners obeyed, focusing fire. At first it seemed futile, until one Dominion cruiser shuddered, flames erupting across its hull. A cheer rippled through the bridge. But victory came at a price. The enemy retaliated with merciless fury, hammering the Resolute Dawn until its shields collapsed entirely. Hull plating split, atmosphere vented, and death stalked every corridor. Still comma. No one surrendered. Kyle stumbled into the command deck, blood streaking his temple. His eyes burned with desperate clarity. "You can't. Hold them alone. Let us fight beside you." Sarah turned, sweat and determination painting her features. "With what? You have no weapons." Kyle's voice dropped to a whisper, fierce and unyielding. "We have memory. We have rage. Give us a chance, and we'll remind the galaxy why they feared us." Sarah hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "Arm them." Elias blinked in disbelief. "Captain, do it," she cut him off. "If this is our end, then let it be together." Within minutes, Kurani wielded salvaged rifles and makeshift blades. Centuries of exile had not dulled their instincts. Shoulder to shoulder with humans, they stormed breached corridors, holding lines the Dominion had nearly overrun. For the first time since their fall, Kurani fought not as scattered survivors, but as warriors. The Dominion fleet tightened formation, dreadnoughts advancing for the killing blow. Yet hesitation crept into their ranks. For every cruiser that pressed forward, one faltered. For every weapon that fired, another wavered. Because across the galaxy, eyes were watching. Pirates, traders, exiles, silent resistances hiding in shadow. They tuned into intercepted transmissions, witnessing humans and Kurani bleed side by side. And in that defiance, something impossible stirred: hope. The Kurani were not extinct. Humanity was not afraid. The Dominion's iron grip trembled. On the resolute dawn, the situation grew dire. Core systems flickered, life support collapsed in half the ship, and casualties mounted. Still, Sarah stood tall, her voice anchoring the crew. "We don't die here, not today, not like this." Kyle joined her, his voice carrying with equal fire. "The galaxy will remember. Even if we fall, they will remember." Side by side, human and Kurani commanded their people. Then came the turning point. Sensors screamed as a distortion rippled through space. From hyperspace emerged ships, small, battered, but armed. Dozens of vessels flying the colors of worlds, long subdued. A ragtag coalition of rebels, smugglers, and forgotten clans. They had come because of the resolute dawn. Because defiance is contagious. Communications lit up. "Human ship, Kurani survivors, we heard your call. You don't stand alone." Sarah's chest tightened, relief and pride clashing in her heart. She turned to Elias. "Open the channel." Her voice rang out across the fleet. "Then let's remind the Dominion what unity looks like." The battle shifted. The coalition swarmed, harassing Dominion war cruisers, disrupting formations, tearing through flanks. For the first time, the Pachi giants bled under countless smaller strikes. The resolute dawn, though crippled, pressed forward, its guns blazing. Kale led Kurani fighters in brutal boarding actions, their ferocity reigniting legends the Dominion had buried in ash. The tide turned, not by strength, but by unity. Hours stretched like lifetimes, but at last the Dominion faltered. One dreadnought withdrew, then another. Soon their fleet fractured, retreating into hyperspace. The void fell silent. The survivors aboard the resolute dawn erupted in exhausted cheers. Tears flowed freely. Human and Kurani clasped hands, bloodied but unbroken. For the first time in centuries, the Kurani were not ghosts. They were warriors reborn. And humanity, once underestimated, had carved its name into the stars. Later, comma. In the dim glow of the medbay, Sarah sat beside Kale. Both bore wounds, but both still breathed. "You realize," she said softly, "this isn't the end. The Dominion will come again, stronger." Kyle nodded. His expression carried both sorrow and resolve. "Yes, but this time we won't face them alone." Their eyes met, an unspoken oath binding them. Humans and Kurani, two species scarred, by war yet unwilling to bow. And across the galaxy, whispers spread into shouts, shouts into movements. The Dominion's reign of fear had cracked. A spark had become a flame. Because a single ship had dared to stand. Because humanity had chosen. Defiance. Because the Kurani had chosen to rise. And together, they had reminded the stars of a truth too long forgotten.